The studio lights blazed like 1,000 suns, casting harsh shadows across the polished floor. Cameras whirred and clicked, capturing every angle, every twitch, every heartbeat. The audience leaned forward in anticipation, murmurs rippling through the rows like an electric current. On one side of the stage, Bill O'Reilly adjusted his tie, a smirk playing across his face, his eyes glinting with practiced arrogance. Across from him, Jasmine Crockett sat poised, her hands folded lightly in front of her, calm but unyielding, radiating a quiet intensity that made the room pulse with tension. It had already happened 4 times, 4 interruptions, 4 attempts to derail her, to silence her, to undermine her voice on a stage broadcast live to millions. And now, the 5th, sharp, cutting, blatant. O'Reilly's words sliced through the air, an arrogant echo that sought to dominate the conversation. But Crockett didn't flinch, not even a blink. The cameras caught every reaction, the subtle tightening of her jaw, the tilt of her chin, the poised inhale before she responded. The audience shifted uneasily, sensing the storm about to break. A hush fell over the studio. The music swelled, dramatic yet restrained, amplifying the tension as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. Quick cuts revealed shocked faces, journalists frozen mid-note, viewers at home gripping their coffee mugs, teenagers in living rooms leaning closer, captivated. Every interruption O'Reilly delivered only sharpened the anticipation. Every smirk he flashed only highlighted the calm composure of the woman he underestimated. And then the moment arrived. Crockett's eyes met the camera, her voice cutting through the charged silence with measured power. "In a moment broadcast live to millions," she said, her tone steady yet piercing. "What I am about to say will leave the world speechless." The words landed like a stone thrown into a still pond, rippling outward, creating waves of disbelief, awe, and excitement. For the audience, it was a jolt of reality. The fight wasn't just on the stage. It was a confrontation of integrity against arrogance, of dignity against bluster. Whispers spread through the studio like wildfire, each frame of live television capturing the tension, the drama, the unspoken stakes. And as the camera panned around one last time across the audience, the truth was undeniable. This wasn't just a heated debate. It was a clash that exposed deeper truths about power and justice.
The cameras pulled back, revealing more than just a stage. They revealed a battlefield. The debate was set against the backdrop of a nation grappling with its identity, a country teetering between the ideals it aspired to and the realities it often failed to uphold. Jasmine Crockett had risen fast, not through theatrics or sensationalism, but through grit, intelligence, and an unshakable commitment to justice. Her name had become a rallying cry for those who demanded integrity in public service, for communities whose voices had long been ignored, and for immigrants and minorities striving to see themselves reflected in the corridors of power. Every word she spoke carried the weight of representation. Every stance a mirror from millions seeking dignity and recognition. Bill O'Reilly, in contrast, represented everything the progressive audience had come to expect from entrenched media figures. Arrogance, a knack for dominating conversation, and a career built on provocation. He wielded his notoriety like a weapon, using interruptions and sharp barbs to unsettle opponents and keep viewers tuned in. Millions knew his name. Millions had formed opinions about him, admiration, anger, or derision. But tonight, his reputation collided with Crockett's rising influence in a way that made history feel immediate. The stakes were far from abstract. This was not merely a televised debate. This was a test of character, of public accountability, of who could speak truth while others attempted to shout it down. As the moderator called the room to order, the gravity became palpable. Each question was a lit fuse, each answer a potential spark. The audience wasn't just observing, they were participants. Emotionally invested, hearts pounding as if each of them bore a stake in the outcome. For millions watching at home, the conflict reflected larger questions. Could integrity survive in the glare of sensationalism? Could courage outweigh bluster? Could identity, heritage, and values guide a nation more than fear or arrogance? Crockett understood this implicitly. Every word she uttered would ripple far beyond the studio walls, shaping perceptions and emboldening or disheartening those who had pinned hope on her voice. The tension was amplified by the unpredictability of live television. One misstep, one poorly chosen phrase, one lapse in composure could shatter reputations, derail careers, and fracture public trust. The air seemed charged with anticipation, the kind that makes seconds feel like hours. O'Reilly's smirk suggested confidence, yet even he must have sensed the undercurrent. This wasn't a simple exchange of talking points. It was a collision of legacies, a moment that could define both figures for generations. Outside the studio, social media feeds flickered with speculation. Hashtags formed within seconds, trending topics multiplied like wildfire, and every snippet of video, every clip of tension was dissected in real time. Viewers weren't passive, they were participants in the unfolding drama, ready to amplify victory, mock failure, and immortalize moments that would define public memory. The world was watching, analyzing, waiting. The debate had become a microcosm of the nation itself, a struggle between arrogance and dignity, spectacle and principle, fear and hope. And as the lights dimmed slightly, and the first questions cut through the charged air, one truth was undeniable. The nation held its breath, and few could predict the storm that was about to unfold. Bill O'Reilly's name had become synonymous with dominance on the airwaves. For decades, he had commanded attention, his voice a familiar, almost unavoidable presence in American living rooms. From cable news studios to late-night pundit panels, O'Reilly perfected a persona built on authority, intimidation, and relentless confidence. He spoke not merely to inform, but to persuade, to unsettle, to dominate conversations with an ironclad certainty that few dared to challenge. His style was sharp, his interruptions surgical, each cutoff delivered with a smirk or raised brow that reminded viewers and opponents alike he controlled the narrative. This reputation was cultivated over years of practice and strategic showmanship. O'Reilly knew the power of spectacle. Every debate, every interview, every on-air confrontation was meticulously calculated to create drama, to provoke reactions, and to reinforce his image as a man who would never yield. Viewers often applauded his assertiveness, describing it as courage or fearlessness. Critics, however, labeled it arrogance. For his opponents, his interruptions were not merely rude, they were a weapon, a psychological tactic meant to destabilize, to make even the most prepared guest falter under the weight of relentless scrutiny. Behind the confident on-screen persona, there were cracks, rumors, controversies, and private dealings that contrasted sharply with the polished public image. Lawsuits, accusations of misconduct, and professional disputes lurked in the shadows, whispers of behavior that, if fully exposed, threatened to undermine the very authority he projected. Yet O'Reilly's skill lay in his ability to deflect, to pivot conversations back to territory where he felt secure, where his voice and presence could dominate. On the surface, he seemed untouchable, a titan of broadcast debate. Beneath, a complex blend of ego, ambition, and vulnerability simmered quietly, unseen by the casual viewer. The interruptions that punctuated his career weren't mere habit. They were deliberate strategies to assert dominance. In debates, he often spoke over opponents, ignoring interjections and reframing the conversation on his terms. Every gesture, every glance was designed to convey superiority. He understood timing with the precision of a chess master, knowing when to escalate and when to retreat, always maintaining the perception that he was in control, that no challenge could truly unsettle him. Yet even the most confident figures have their limits. and O'Reilly's style relied heavily on the assumption that opponents would respond with frustration, hesitation, or aggression. He thrived on exploiting these weaknesses. When confronted by someone who remained calm, composed, and strategically silent, the very tools he relied on could become liabilities. The more he pressed, the more visible cracks in his armor could appear. A single miscalculation, a perfectly timed counter, could unravel years of carefully constructed dominance. Throughout his career, O'Reilly had faced criticism, yes, but rarely from someone whose background, intellect, and moral authority demanded respect in a way that could neutralize his bluster. Each interruption he delivered built tension, set the stage, and inadvertently framed the opponent as capable, resilient, and morally grounded, a stark contrast to the image of himself as an unshakable force. In this framing, the seeds of his eventual vulnerability were planted with every public display of arrogance, with every smirk meant to intimidate, but instead hinting at the fragility beneath. To his fans, he was an unmovable giant. To his critics, a man teetering on the edge of exposure. And in the highly charged world of live debates, where millions of eyes scrutinized every syllable, O'Reilly's reputation was shield and target, a duality that made him compelling, feared, and, unknowingly, vulnerable. Yet in the shadows of his power, a challenger was quietly preparing a response that would shake his very foundation.
Jasmine Crockett's path was never paved with privilege or ease. Born into a world that often questioned her worth, she learned early the weight of expectation and the sting of exclusion. Her family, immigrants who had sacrificed everything to build a better life in America, instilled in her a profound sense of duty and resilience. They taught her that dignity was not granted, it was earned, often in the quiet moments of struggle that no one saw. From long nights studying in dimly lit rooms to days spent balancing schoolwork with community service, Crockett absorbed lessons in perseverance that would later become the backbone of her public life. Education was her first battleground. At a time when opportunities for young women like her were limited, Crockett excelled, not for accolades, but to carve a path forward for herself and for others who would come after her. Scholarships, internships, mentorships, each step required navigating systems designed to favor the powerful, the well-connected. Yet every obstacle she faced honed her instincts, sharpened her mind, and reinforced her belief that preparation and integrity were inseparable. The challenges of her youth were more than hurdles. They were training grounds, shaping a woman capable of meeting arrogance and aggression with calm, calculated poise. Her professional journey mirrored this resilience. Entering the world of law and public service, Crockett confronted institutional inertia and cultural biases, often being the youngest or only person of her background in a room full of decision-makers. She advocated tirelessly for marginalized communities, fought for equitable legislation, and refused compromises that would undermine her values. Each case, each policy battle demanded not just skill, but courage, and the public quickly noticed. Her reputation grew not through spectacle, but through steadfast commitment, earning her the respect of colleagues, constituents, and activists alike. Personal sacrifice became a recurring theme in her life. There were nights she skipped sleep to ensure a family had legal representation, weekends spent in community meetings while others celebrated, and moments when public scrutiny threatened to erode the private joys that sustain most people. She faced criticism, attacks, and doubt, not just from opponents, but sometimes from those who could not see the depth of her dedication. And yet through every setback, Crockett's resolve strengthened. She had learned that true leadership was not about winning applause in the moment. It was about making decisions that mattered in the long run, even when invisible to the world.
By the time she reached national prominence, Crockett had accumulated more than experience. She had amassed a presence that commanded attention without demanding it. Her calm demeanor, her ability to listen before speaking, and her mastery of facts and rhetoric created an aura of unshakable authority. Unlike many who rise quickly through charisma alone, Crockett's influence was rooted in substance. Every word she spoke carried weight because it reflected years of preparation, struggle, and moral clarity. Audiences sensed it instinctively. Here was someone who had lived the challenges she spoke about and who could articulate solutions grounded in both principle and pragmatism. In the political arena, Crockett's trajectory was not accidental. She had studied opponents, anticipated arguments, and understood the theater of public discourse. But her preparation extended beyond strategy. It was personal, ethical, and psychological. She knew the dangers of underestimating those who wielded power through intimidation, and she had cultivated the patience and resilience to turn aggression into opportunity. Where others saw interruptions and bluster, she saw openings for clarity, moments to assert truth with precision and poise. Her past had trained her to respond not with anger, but with confidence, not with haste, but with timing that maximized impact. Crockett's story resonated deeply with those who had faced marginalization, discrimination, or doubt. She became more than a politician. She became a symbol of possibility. Immigrants saw in her the promise that perseverance could overcome systemic barriers. Women saw the embodiment of courage in the face of interruption and belittlement. Communities that had long felt unseen recognized a voice that not only represented them, but amplified their struggles and aspirations. In every speech, debate, and public appearance, Crockett carried the weight of countless unseen supporters, channeling their hopes into a measured, unwavering presence. Her ability to face O'Reilly with composure was not accidental. It was the culmination of a lifetime of preparation. Every challenge, every sacrifice, every late-night study session and courtroom argument had been building toward moments exactly like this. Moments where clarity, courage, and moral authority were the only tools capable of cutting through arrogance. She understood the stakes, not just for herself, but for the millions watching, for the principles of justice, identity, and dignity on which her career had been built. All the training, all the preparation, it led to this very stage at this very moment.
The debate intensified with every passing second, each sentence a spark threatening to ignite a full-blown blaze. Bill O'Reilly leaned forward, voice sharp and deliberate, cutting through the dialogue with practiced aggression. His smirk never wavered, a signature gesture signaling confidence, superiority, and control. Every interruption was carefully timed, a strategic push to unsettle Crockett, to break her rhythm, to dominate the conversation in front of millions of eyes glued to their screens. Yet Crockett remained calm, her posture composed, her gaze steady. She spoke deliberately, letting each word land with precision, each pause heavy with intent. The contrast was electric, the villain seizing, prodding, provoking, the hero listening, calculating, absorbing. The audience could feel the tension building like an approaching storm. Heads tilted, eyebrows raised, whispers curling through the rows as viewers subconsciously picked sides. Every interruption from O'Reilly drew gasps. Every composed response from Crockett drew murmurs of admiration. O'Reilly's tone grew sharper, edged with impatience. He repeated points he had already made, raising his voice, attempting to drown out reason with volume. Quick hand gestures, pointed fingers, a laugh dripping with condescension. He was performing dominance, a calculated display meant to intimidate. Yet each act of aggression revealed cracks in his approach. Crockett's serene composure highlighted his overconfidence, making his bluster seem increasingly hollow. The studio cameras caught it all, the flicker of tension behind O'Reilly's eyes, the slight shift in posture as he recalibrated mid-attack, the subtle tightening of his jaw. The rhythm of the debate became a battlefield. O'Reilly lobbed provocations, each one a test, a challenge. He questioned her experience, her priorities, her credibility, seeking to undermine not just her words, but the authority she carried. Crockett answered with facts, clarity, and measured rhetoric. She reframed attacks as teachable moments, turning criticism into exposition that highlighted her principles rather than giving him the satisfaction of a reaction. Every rebuttal landed like a strategic strike, her calm intensity magnifying the disparity between their approaches. Audience reactions grew more animated. Gasps, murmurs, subtle applause punctuated moments when Crockett's arguments cut through the noise. People at home leaned forward, caught between disbelief and admiration, swept up in the drama that felt larger than the studio walls. The tension became almost tangible. It wasn't just a clash of ideas, it was a clash of character. One figure wielded authority like a weapon. The other embodied integrity under pressure, a force that could not be rushed or shaken. O'Reilly's interruptions became more frequent, bordering on chaos. Yet each attempt only amplified Crockett's presence. She never rushed, never raised her voice beyond what was necessary, her calm becoming a mirror, reflecting his insecurity. The contrast was cinematic, every camera angle, every cut emphasizing the psychological duel playing out in real time. The villain's arrogance was loud, visible, and aggressive. The hero's strategy was quiet, invisible, until the moment it struck with undeniable impact. And then, the moment that would leave the studio in stunned silence.
The room fell silent, a pause so heavy it seemed to suspend time itself. Every camera angle lingered on Jasmine Crockett's face, capturing the calm precision in her eyes, the subtle shift of her hands as she leaned slightly forward. The fifth interruption from O'Reilly had failed to rattle her. Instead, it set the stage. She inhaled deliberately, letting the tension thrum in the air, letting the audience feel the weight of anticipation. Millions of viewers, glued to screens across living rooms, offices, and cafes, seemed to collectively hold their breath. This was the moment where everything, years of preparation, struggles, and quiet determination would be tested. Crockett began with a measured tone, her voice steady yet commanding. She reframed the chaos O'Reilly had created, turning each interruption into evidence of his approach: domination over discourse, arrogance over substance, aggression over truth. "Interrupting me repeatedly," she said, slowly, letting the words resonate, "does not change the facts. It does not diminish the communities I serve. It does not rewrite the values that guide my work." Her articulation was precise, her cadence deliberate. Every pause, every controlled breath amplified the impact, forcing the audience to absorb not just the words, but the gravity behind them. O'Reilly shifted in his seat, the first cracks showing in his confident posture. A furrowed brow, a tightened jaw, a flicker of doubt in his eyes, subtle but unmistakable. The cameras didn't miss it. Close-ups captured the micro-expressions that betrayed vulnerability, each one magnified for the millions watching at home. The contrast was undeniable. His attempts at dominance now appeared performative, almost desperate. Her composure, unshakable and precise, radiated authority. As she continued, Crockett layered her counterattack with facts and evidence. She cited statistics, legislative achievements, and instances of injustice she had fought against, weaving a narrative that connected personal experience with systemic critique. Each point was a deliberate strike, unassailable, and yet delivered without a hint of malice. She didn't need to shout. Her authority was inherent. She turned the spotlight back on principles, reminding viewers that debates weren't about theatrics, they were about accountability, integrity, and representation. The studio reacted audibly. Gasps punctuated the air. Murmurs of admiration rose in waves. Even O'Reilly's production team shifted nervously behind the cameras, aware that the dynamic had changed. The audience leaned in, captivated by the unfolding drama. In that moment, the hero was fully in command, not through volume or aggression, but through unwavering clarity and moral authority. The villain's dominance had been inverted. The very interruptions meant to destabilize now underscored her strength. Social media erupted almost instantly. Imagined tweets and posts flashed across screens in real time. Crockett just demolished O'Reilly with facts and poise. Wow. This is how you handle arrogance without stooping to it. Respect. Watching history unfold in real time, she's fearless. Memes circulated, highlighting her calm versus his smirk, turning a tense debate into a viral moment of admiration and inspiration. Viewers at home shared clips, dissected her responses, and marveled at her ability to translate composure into decisive impact. O'Reilly attempted a retort, his voice sharper now, a note of strain threading through the usual confidence. He tried to interrupt, tried to regain control, but Crockett anticipated the move. She maintained eye contact, subtly signaling her readiness to counter any escalation. Her timing was impeccable. Each response she offered dismantled his points systematically, with clarity and authority. Her pauses were strategic, allowing statements to land fully, giving weight to facts and principles over bluster. The drama escalated as Crockett delivered her final mic-drop line. "You can interrupt me," she said, calm but piercing, "but you cannot interrupt the truth. You cannot silence the communities I represent. You cannot erase the progress built on courage, dedication, and integrity." The words resonated through the studio like a hammer striking steel. Silence followed for a heartbeat, long enough for viewers to grasp the magnitude of what had just occurred. The villain, once unshakable, sat frozen for a moment, the weight of accountability pressing visibly on him. Audience reactions intensified. Applause erupted, hesitant at first, then swelling into a wave of affirmation. Whispers of admiration, nods of recognition, and stunned glances filled the room. The live feed captured every nuance, eyes widening, mouths parting in disbelief, subtle smiles of respect spreading across viewers' faces. Every frame reinforced the reversal. Arrogance toppled by measured authority. Intimidation met with unwavering composure. Commentators, pundits, and analysts, both live and online, scrambled to respond. Headlines were drafted before the debate even concluded. Jasmine Crockett turns the tables in historic live takedown. O'Reilly stumbles as Crockett delivers poised masterclass in debate. Social media continued to churn. Threads exploded with discussion. Hashtags trended globally, and clips went viral across platforms. The moment transcended the studio. It had become a cultural flashpoint, an emblem of courage and poise in the face of aggression. Crockett allowed a final pause, letting the silence speak as loudly as her words. Every eye in the studio and every screen across the nation was fixed not on the interruptions that came before, but on the power of integrity that had just been displayed. Her performance was not simply a victory in a debate. It was a demonstration of strategic patience, moral clarity, and the potency of preparation in the face of arrogance. In that moment, the balance of power shifted irreversibly. The villain's smirk faltered.
His interruptions had failed, and the audience, both in the studio and across the country, recognized a new authority. Crockett's calm, her intellect, and her courage had not only neutralized the attacks, but had converted them into a stage for inspiration. The impact was undeniable, immediate, and electrifying. The aftermath of her words didn't just echo in the studio, it shook the nation.
The moment Crockett's words landed, the studio seemed suspended in disbelief. Cameras lingered on stunned faces, while behind the scenes, producers whispered urgently, realizing that what had just unfolded would dominate headlines for days. Across the nation, millions of viewers replayed the clip, sharing it on social media with a sense of awe and admiration. Within minutes, hashtags began trending. Hashtag Crockett stands tall. Hashtag truth over arrogance. Hashtag mic drop moment. Each tag carried a mixture of shock, respect, and excitement, a digital applause reverberating across timelines and feeds. Memes began to proliferate almost instantly, capturing the stark contrast between O'Reilly's faltering smirk and Crockett's composed authority. Images circulated side by side, captioned with words that emphasized poise versus bluster, integrity versus ego. Some depicted her raising a calm finger in the studio while he leaned forward, smirk frozen, highlighting his overconfidence and her unshakable presence. Others humorously portrayed the contrast as David standing against Goliath, yet each iteration reinforced the narrative. Dignity and preparation had conquered arrogance. Commentators and analysts scrambled to make sense of what they had witnessed. Television segments dissected the exchange frame by frame, highlighting Crockett's timing, word choice, and unflappable demeanor. Journalists debated the implications, emphasizing how her composure not only neutralized interruptions, but also elevated the discourse, showing that facts and integrity could prevail over theatrics. Social media threads carried detailed breakdowns, explaining her strategy and applauding her restraint, each analysis deepening the public's appreciation for her skills. Celebrities and public figures added their voices to the chorus. Influencers tweeted admiration for her courage. Actors and musicians posted clips with captions praising her calm authority, and politicians weighed in with statements of respect. A senator remarked, "Watching Jasmine Crockett handle herself tonight reminds us all what leadership looks like under pressure." A prominent activist wrote, "She turned a tense debate into a masterclass of dignity and strategy. This is how change is made." Each acknowledgement amplified the ripple effect, demonstrating that her performance had transcended a single broadcast and entered the realm of national discourse. News outlets seized the story with fervor. Headlines screamed across web pages. Crockett silences O'Reilly in historic debate showdown. Integrity over ego, the debate moment that shocked millions. Jasmine Crockett turns interruption into inspiration. Opinion columns highlighted not just the spectacle, but the principles at stake: accountability, public service, and the power of composure. Editorial boards praised her for demonstrating leadership grounded in values rather than performance, and commentary panels repeatedly contrasted her methodical approach with O'Reilly's aggression, reinforcing the narrative for hero versus villain. The public response was immediate and measurable. Viewers shared clips in private groups, tweeted endorsements to politicians, and posted heartfelt reflections about what Crockett's performance meant to them personally. Many expressed validation, saying they felt seen, represented, and inspired by her courage and poise. Immigrant communities and identity-driven advocacy groups hailed her as a role model, noting that her victory was not only personal but symbolic, a demonstration that persistence, preparation, and moral clarity could triumph even under intense pressure. Even casual viewers who might not normally follow political debates were drawn in. The viral nature of the clip sparked conversations in homes, coffee shops, classrooms, and offices. Friends texted friends. Families discussed the moment at dinner tables, and strangers debated the nuances of her strategy. The effect was a collective cultural experience. Millions had witnessed a single moment that reaffirmed values of dignity, intellect, and courage in the face of intimidation. As the digital storm continued to swell, it became clear that Crockett's victory was more than a personal triumph. It had sparked a national dialogue about integrity, civility, and the responsibilities of those in positions of influence. Social validation came not just from applause, but from a shared sense of empowerment. Viewers felt that standing firm in truth, even under relentless pressure, was not only possible, but impactful. The ripple effects were palpable, extending from the studio to the streets, from timelines to mainstream media, and into the hearts of those who had longed for examples of principled leadership. But beyond the immediate shock, a larger lesson was unfolding.
In the quiet that followed the storm of debate, the weight of what had just transpired began to settle. Jasmine Crockett's composure, her unwavering clarity, and her measured responses had not only neutralized the interruptions, they had transformed a heated confrontation into a lesson in courage, dignity, and service. The room, once tense and fractured by arrogance, now shimmered with a sense of resolution. Cameras lingered on her calm expression, capturing the subtle smile that spoke not of triumph over another, but of victory for principles far larger than any individual ego. Crockett reframed the moment effortlessly. She had taken an encounter designed to intimidate and turned it into a testament to integrity. Power, she implied without words, is not measured by volume or dominance, but by consistency, by service, by the courage to stand for what is right even when the odds are stacked against you. The broadcast captured every nuance, the way her eyes reflected quiet strength, the deliberate cadence of her speech, the understated gestures that radiated assurance. It was not spectacle, it was substance, and the message resonated universally. Viewers across the nation absorbed it. Immigrants, students, activists, and families alike saw a reflection of their own struggles in her poise, and a validation that perseverance could overcome obstruction. Her example illuminated the truth that dignity is never contingent on others' approval, and that service rooted in principle leaves an impact far deeper than the fleeting victories of arrogance or intimidation. The lesson was simple yet profound. Character outlasts performance. Integrity outshines bluster. And courage creates ripples that echo far beyond a single moment. Social media continued to amplify the moral clarity of the encounter. Tweets and posts highlighted the inspirational takeaway rather than the spectacle of confrontation. Leadership isn't loud, it's steady. She reminded us all that values matter more than ego. This is how you turn pressure into purpose. Memes shifted tone, portraying not just the drama of the debate, but the dignity and foresight that Crockett had demonstrated. The nation collectively reflected, recognizing that a single display of principled resilience could inspire movements, conversations, and renewed commitment to justice. Commentators and civic leaders echoed the sentiment. Analysts framed Crockett's responses as a masterclass in civility under duress, while public figures emphasized the broader implications. This was a demonstration that leadership anchored in integrity and courage could counteract intimidation and reshape narratives in the public sphere. The hero had not just won a debate, he had reinforced the values that underpin civic life: justice, service, empathy, and accountability. Cinematic visuals in the broadcast reinforced this universal lesson. Slow pans over inspired audience faces, reactions from diverse communities, archival flashes of her work in law and activism, each frame underscoring a life dedicated to service. Voiceovers highlighted her tireless commitment to communities, her battles for equality, and the perseverance that had brought her to this defining moment. Every element emphasized the connection between her personal journey and the broader societal ideals she championed, creating a crescendo that felt both intimate and universal. In the end, the confrontation had been about more than words on a stage. It had become a symbol of possibility, a demonstration that even in the presence of arrogance, hate, or intimidation, steadfast commitment to values could prevail. Crockett's victory was a reminder that courage, preparation, and moral clarity are forces that ripple outward, inspiring not only immediate observers but generations yet to come. Her calm strength, her refusal to yield, and her ability to transform aggression into a lesson in dignity had created a moment that transcended partisan lines, resonating across communities hungry for hope and affirmation. And for millions watching, the message was clear: courage matters more than ever.
The debate had ended, but the impact lingered. Jasmine Crockett's poised dismantling of Bill O'Reilly's interruptions had become more than a viral moment. It was a statement, a reflection of values that matter: integrity, courage, and service above self. Bill O'Reilly interrupts Jasmine Crockett 5 times. Her final response stuns millions live on air. Was no longer just a headline. It was a symbol of what happens when preparation, principle, and unwavering dignity confront arrogance. Viewers were left inspired, validated, and motivated. This was a story that resonated far beyond the studio, reminding each person watching that their voice, their values, and their persistence mattered. Crockett's calm authority had shown that power is not in volume, interruption, or ego. It is in courage, clarity, and the ability to stand for truth under pressure. The narrative had shifted. The hero's composure illuminated the path, while the villain's bluster reminded the world that arrogance cannot withstand substance. Now the audience had a role to play. Share the story, discuss the moment, and bring these lessons into everyday life. Engage in conversations that matter. Amplify voices that deserve to be heard, and stand firm when principles are tested. Every click, every share, every thoughtful discussion extends the ripple effect of courage and integrity. Join the conversation. Stand for truth. Share this story, because courage should never go unnoticed. Let Jasmine Crockett's example remind us that every act of dignity, every refusal to yield to intimidation, and every commitment to justice contributes to a larger movement. The debate may have ended, but the inspiration continues, lighting a path for all who dare to stand for what is right.